Newsfirst, NEWSLINE with Faraz, Shauketaly.
And a very good evening to you and welcome to NEWSLINE Live. This evening my guest is a gentleman, a doctor from the Sri Lanka Health Promotion Bureau, and he's right here with us going to talk to us about the various concerns and exactly how we're all coping as a nation with the global pandemic, COVID-19. He's right here, Dr. Ashan Patharana. Very good evening to you, Doctor.
Good evening.
Now, what are the main concerns right now?
So, if you talk about the vaccine, right, the main concerns for us are there are a lot of myths that are circulating. But apart from that, the vaccination is going smoothly.
You mean the program?
Yes, the vaccination program is moving ahead smoothly, and we are continuing it business as usual. And we are keeping a watch on the adverse effects that could come, because we do it with every single vaccination program in the country.
We've got 1.2 million, just a little bit over. But overall, we are hoping to vaccinate how many? 8 million, is it? 8 or 9 million?
Yeah.
So we're a bit long way off from there.
I guess all the countries in the world are a bit short on that league, but then again...
so where is this being concentrated now, the 1.2 million? Is it in the Western province?
Yes, so we are targeting the high-risk groups.
Right.
So first of all, it was given to the healthcare workers, then moved on to the high-risk pockets, and now it's targeting the most vulnerable groups, that's the 60 plus from the risk areas, and it will slowly go on to the other areas. And the epidemiology unit will make the rational decisions based on the availability and the risk that is currently there in the country.
Is there, some people are concerned that having got their first dose, that the second one may not be arriving on time. What's the alternative?
There's no alternative. Like right now, yes, we have to give it with the same vaccine that the first dose was given. And we do have faith in the system, because we got the first set of vaccines, and because the vaccine procurement takes place through the diplomatic channels. So there's very little we can do in terms of procuring the vaccines from the health ministry side. But we do have faith in the system, which have been delivering the goods.
But with the Serum Institute, Sri Lanka has actually paid them.
Yeah. Right. So there are two ways of getting it. So one is through the COVAX facility, where the WHO, along with the UN organizations, the UNICEF is doing the procurement part, WHO is organizing the funding. So they are bringing in about 27% right now of the vaccine requirement in the country. So that will be coming in free of charge. But at the same time, the government is discussing with other countries on procuring the vaccines through the paid channels as well.
Right. So currently you're happy the way things are going, the way things are rolling out. But what are your concerns?
Concerns in terms of, so we are having the new year coming up.
Right.
So that's a place where we have to be cautious, but not to be very...
mainly because the Western province, which is where the problem's really concentrated, and people working here will be going back to hometown for New Year. That's what you're talking about.
Yes, that's the main concern. So the government will lay out the protocols in days to come, but it's up to the people actually. So people have, we see a lot of negativism, right? People saying that people are not adhering to the guidelines and all, but we are doing some things right, and that needs to be highlighted as well. When we walk on the road, we hardly see a person without a mask. But in some countries they talk about the rights and they don't wear the masks even for the gatherings. But in terms of our population, they're actually being responsible. You won't be able to walk into a supermarket without a mask. So some things are being done, and that's doing a good job in controlling the disease. And if people do stick to those guidelines, and if we do practice all the precautions, we should be able to move around.
But I still see, not as much, but I do still see trains, for example, with a lot of logistic close contact.
So those are the logistic issues that the country is facing. So being a third world country, we do not have the facilities to put in extra trains or something to space out and do the whole thing. Even the buses, we are having the same issue. So we do whatever we can to the best possible state with the available resources. So yes, we did want the buses to leave a seat in between and all, but when it comes to, because see, the health ministry can't decide on the transport and everything, so we do give our recommendation, but then again the others have to decide. The economy needs to keep running, right, at the same time. So the ideal thing would be to call for a shutdown till the disease is over, but then we won't have the vaccines, or we don't have the money to get the vaccines.
Right.
Okay, so it's about striking a balance between the best possible scenario and to get the most essential things done.
How many people do you think will adhere to this thing and say, well, don't go home because of the super spreader?
I don't think the government will ask people not to go home. The requirement will be for people to stick to the guidelines and the health precautions in every possible situation when they do travel.
Right.
Because see, the health is not only about COVID and physical health.
Yeah.
It's the spiritual, psychological and social well-being as well.
Right.
Sri Lanka has gone on without New Year, a proper New Year celebration for 2 years now, right? So people are getting frustrated, especially the COVID situation have given rise to a lot of psychological issues that are actually not coming out so far, because people are having financial difficulties, there are social issues, there are so many things that are actually hidden behind the curtain, because our culture is such that people don't come out and talk about psychological issues. But as the health authorities, we have to look at every aspect of the human being when we make a decision. It's not about just COVID. We have to look into the spiritual aspect and whether people are happy. They haven't had their cultural events. So we need to find a way where we find a balance, where we allow people to go ahead with their livelihood and these cultural things within the limitations of this COVID management. So the protocols will come out in the future. But
What about the distinct possibility of the provincial council election?
well, that again will have to, so far it's not been concrete, like so
Yeah.
the health ministry is not discussing this matter at all, but there will be a committee, just like last time, where when we wanted to have the elections, there was a special committee of experts who managed it so well, like we didn't have a peak after the election. So likewise, they will assess and see whether it is actually possible to have the election, and once the approval is given, they will give the set of guidelines to follow. In that scenario, it's a thing that you have to consider based on situation.
In that case, as you seem, it seems listening to you, that it's rather all positive. In which case, why can't they open up the airport and let the tourists in, whoever wants to travel?
So I think the main issue is, like, okay, one thing is we don't want any COVID cases coming in, because even right now we are doing the screening and trying to find out who have the disease. But the biggest problem is there are different strains of the virus which could still enter the country and unleash havoc. If the variant that was identified in South Africa, that does not mean it's a South African virus. It was detected in South Africa. So there was another strain that was detected in Brazil, right? But those strains do spread faster than the others, and even in terms of the vaccine efficacy is questionable in with this virus strain. So we have to be very careful, and we need to continue the precautions that we take, and it will be evaluated in the days to come, but we do have to be careful.
So, in terms of letting the tourists in and saving the hospitality industry, do you want to encourage even more, or do you think that in this limiting it the way it is a good idea?
So
the latest rules, by the way, which I know that you haven't had a chance to look at, talks about 7 days and so on and so forth.
So the thing is like this, we have to make sure that we, as I said earlier, it's a balance between what's best and what's good for the economy as well. So the 7 days decision, right? So when we take a decision, it's based on the reports that we are getting. So we currently have a 14-day thing, but if we are not detecting any cases after the 7th day, then we do have evidence. See, that's the thing about a new disease. We are learning every day. So we do go for the extremes of action.
Right.
Like when we, right at the very beginning, we had to go for shutdowns when there were only a few cases, and people are asking, now we have so many cases, why are you not shutting down? Because at that point, we didn't know what we were dealing with. We needed some time to catch our breath, understand this, understand where we are heading. Now we are getting to know the virus more and more. So we are trying to allow the economy to function within the limitations.
Right. And the other concern, of course, is the what about if we don't get the AstraZeneca, the next lot in time? At what point does it become dangerous for me as a person who's had the Covishield Part 1?
Okay. So the evidence right now shows that up to 90 days, your vaccine efficacy is quite good. So what you need is between 8 to 12 weeks, you need to get a booster dose to get your immunity back up
Yeah.
to a level where you will be protected from the virus.
Yeah.
So it will keep declining, but that doesn't mean just because you miss the 12 weeks, all of a sudden you become vulnerable. These are all based on evidence that are currently available.
Right.
See, if you look at the first regime was 4 weeks.
Yeah.
You're supposed to get it in 4 weeks, but then the new evidence came out saying no, even after 12 weeks it's good, and it's actually giving better results at 12 weeks. So, the evidence is changing, but we are
Right.
very hopeful that the vaccines will be available. And
Can we mix and match?
right now in Sri Lanka, we have not approved, and the world has not approved any mix and match type of
Nowhere in the
vaccines.
world.
But there
is-
are trials going on. So
Right.
you see, if you look at the science of it, so the AstraZeneca is a viral vector vaccine, and Sputnik 5 is again a viral vector vaccine, where the vector in the AstraZeneca is the CHODOX, the chimpanzee adenovirus Oxford 1. Whereas Sputnik is using two different human adenoviruses, human adenovirus 5 and 26. So they are giving the two doses in two different, using two different vectors.
Right.
So there are some trials going on whether you can give the first dose with AstraZeneca and give the second one with Sputnik 5, because it's the same technology, right? So it's the vector is different, but like right now,
But it's still a rather very unexplored.
experimental stage, and in Sri Lanka it's not yet approved.
It's virgin territory for everyone.
Yes.
Right. Just ahead of the break, what do you say to people? I've spoken to a number of pensioners, shall we say, the older people. I met somebody yesterday, actually, and he said, no, I'm not having it. I said, why? He said, oh, I've heard all sorts of stories.
Yeah.
What are these all sorts of stories?
So with any vaccine, right?
Yeah.
We might have heard about the measles vaccine, right? People were saying that it causes autism and all those things, and about 150,000 people died in Europe like 2 years ago because of that. And in Sri Lanka, nobody died of measles in Sri Lanka. So yes, when you have those speculations, it can kill people. That's the part that people don't understand. You can come on social media and start to spread speculations, but you will not understand the gravity of it. You
Yeah.
will see people dying, especially the old people. If they don't take the vaccine, they are the most vulnerable. So that's a very unfortunate situation with the availability of social media. People are abusing it.
And thank you for your questions by SMS 0772 300 305. We're about to go into a short break, but can we say, let me take this question. How long before we take the second shot, and would there be any jabs to go around in a few weeks' time?
Yeah, I think that's the same question we discussed.
Yes.
So the gap is 8 to 12 weeks, and we are hopeful and we are quite confident that the government will be able to provide that.
But we had conflicting reports from the Serum Institute of India. First they said, if this is one of our companies, our board would have a fit. Because they first said, look, thank you for the order, we're going to do it. Then they said, their auditor said, there's been a fire, and so it's affecting our ability to deliver. And also we've got new orders. Hello, you don't do the new orders until you sort out your previous orders for which you've got your the money. And offering to refund the money isn't a real option. So that, obviously that, and with the information divide very little here, everybody has one of these phones, so people are genuinely concerned.
Yeah. So there are two procurement methods I told you. One is the COVAX facility. So if we ask who laid the first order on the Serum Institute,
Yeah.
COVAX is one of the first orders.
Right.
So COVAX is also supplying us. So
Right.
they also know that the first dose will go to waste if the second vaccine doesn't come on time.
I know you're not a
So-
politician, but do you
Yeah.
think there's politics involved in all this?
So I think it's very clear to say vaccine diplomacy, vaccine nationalism, all of those were topics that came out during the first half. It's definitely a political scenario because it's power.
Let's go now to a break and have a look at the headlines for this evening's primetime news from News First.
News First, Newsline with Faraz Shauketaly.
And welcome back to Newsline Live. I'm in conversation with Dr. Shauketaly. Now then, thank you very much for your questions. And of the second jab, if the second jab is not available, would this first one have been in vain?
Right. Very good question. So we started off with that discussion, but we didn't want to say what happens if we miss it.
Yes.
So right now we do not have evidence to say that it becomes nullified. Because the best example we can take is what happens to a vaccine during the EPI, Extended Program of Immunization for Children.
Right.
So in that, say if a child comes for the 2nd month's vaccination and comes for the 4th month, but misses out on the 6th and comes after 12 months,
Yeah.
we don't go back to 2. We start off with the 6th and continue the regime. So yes, but that's based on evidence because these vaccines have been there for a long time. But this one does not have. But the possibilities, we will give it as soon as it's available. But I mean, I'm saying, like, you know, we are very confident that it will be available. This is like the worst case scenario situation. So the other possibilities, if the evidence is available about the switching the vaccines, especially the viral vector
The mix and
vaccines,
match.
the AstraZeneca and the Sputnik 5 are both viral vector vaccines, and there are trials going on about
So similar technology.
similar technology. Yeah.
Here's one for you as a doctor. Can my grandfather, age 91, diabetic, high blood pressure, and with DVT, deep vein thrombosis, who's had that recently, can he take the vaccine?
Definitely. So the problem is, if he's having DVT, he might be on anticoagulants. So
Right.
that is a contraindication for intramuscular vaccines. But then again, it has to be consulted with the. So we do the clotting profile.
I think we better do a little disclaimer here. Whilst we have a doctor on the program and so on, and he's answering questions, but these are being answered in general terms. Neither us nor the doctor can take any specific responsibility for a specific case, and you really ought to be consulting your own medical
Absolutely.
practitioner for the specific information. We'd like to make that absolutely clear.
So yeah, that decision would be with the physician, as you said. So a clotting profile is a must before the vaccine. So with that, he's a candidate.
And when we were thinking about it now, you know, you spoke about the new year coming up and so on. And you spoke about this 2 years we haven't had a proper system.
Yeah.
Which is more important? Is it to have a proper new year in, you know, with all the crowds and all that? Or is it to make sure that we still stick to all our rules and so on and the procedures to fight COVID? Which is more important?
So the important thing is health. Health per se is not just COVID. It's not about physical health alone.
Yeah.
It's about psychological, spiritual, and the mental well-being as well. So if people are having psychological issues, and if they are being suppressed, and if they are frustrated about their lives, if we do not allow these things to go on, because it's a balance between the two. So it doesn't mean that we are just encouraging fun-loving events. No, that's part of human life. Just because we can't just shut down the country today and just operate. That would be the ideal situation, right?
Right.
Till we get things under control. But if the economy is not functioning properly, we won't get the vaccines. So likewise, we have to strike a balance between people's daily life, what they believe, right? And even when it comes to these cremation issues and the burials. So there were a lot of issues about, in terms of the disease control, none of that should matter. But then again, there were issues about people themselves. These are human beings in this country. So that's why all these discussions were going for and against these discussions. Right? So the reason is, these are humans we are dealing with. We have to look after the human being, not just the disease or a so-called entity right now. Because people might die of heart disease, psychological issues more than the COVID if we don't strike a balance between those things. So
I'm tempted to say that because you're talking about the mental state and all that, I'm tempted to ask you, what do you think the stress levels are from that particular community when they find that they can't bury their dearly departed and so on? What do you think their stress levels
obviously very high.
are? And
so
then compounded now with the ban or the proposed ban on the burqa.
Yeah, those are all things that's the thing. So that's why we have a decision level at the Ministry of Health in terms of science. As I tell, this is like a company that's operating. So we are like one end where we give the scientific facts, but the decision making will have to come from the CEO of the company. So like a company where you have the marketing department and your sales department and your R&D. but none of those guys can run the show for the company. So it will be the CEO who's making the final judgment. We have given our scientific inputs on it, but that doesn't mean that it's the truth and what's correct by the people. We can give our inputs, but at the end of the day, people have elected a democratic government, and they will have to make the choice on behalf of people.
Indeed. So they will make the choice, but how do you think that our medical fraternity are actually paying real attention to the psychological side of things?
Yeah.
Are they?
Yes. So even after COVID, if we really look at it, like so the National Institute of Mental Health and the College of Psychiatrists have done so much of work, even on the hotline that we have for the Health Promotion Bureau. There is a special forwarding line for any psychological issues. So yes, we are looking into the aspects that we can control.
I met somebody who was recently remanded and then given bail, but he said that when he went in to the prison system, it was like he was being given a death sentence, because he knew 100% sure that he would get COVID-19. In fact, he did. And then on release, he was taken to quarantine, all that. Don't what about the prison system? Don't they have rights? They have human rights too? They have feelings?
They have every right as every other human being in the society.
How much of attention is the government paying to that?
Well,
from a medical point of view,
So from the medical point of view, we provide all the services that are available for the general public towards them. But how and when it is being consulted, well, I'm not in a position to
you can't say.
No, because I'm not
because
a professional in the prison system that's operated as a separate ministry, so we don't get to go and
How
see
much of your promotion work do you do inside the prison system?
Whenever it's requested, because it's not an area where
Who
we
has
can
to
just
request it?
So from the prisons department, so there are medical professionals involved with the prisoners, and if there are issues, they will have to make a request, because that's not an area where we can just walk in and start doing promotional activities.
Right. But nevertheless, don't you think that you're allowed to be proactive?
Absolutely. So
Because sometimes the prison systems, they just ignore everything until there's a big blast, and then there's a big problem, and it causes negativity to the country as a whole.
Yeah. So that's why there's a system in place. So if there is a problem, the system needs to be changed on how these things are detected and how they're reported. But that doesn't mean we can bypass the system and just walk in and
No, that's true. We can't do that, but you can write a little note to them and ask them, can we help? Do you need any special help? They may have forgotten all about the Health Promotion Board.
So that's a possibility, and I think like even the College of Psychiatrists and the National Institute of Mental Health, they would be very happy to come on board and support these initiatives if the requirement is understood.
I see. Let's have another look at is the vaccine safe for those who are suffering from muscular pains, since side effect of vaccination is body and back pain?
So right now, this is not a contraindication just because you're having muscle pains. See, the reason why you get body aches after the vaccine is because of your immune system. So we are introducing a particle that is alien to us. That is a surface protein of the.
But a friend of mine didn't have anything, and I had headaches, and I had a upset tummy for about 2 days, and I certainly had a headache for about 2.5 to nearly 3 days.
Same here.
But my colleague, and he didn't have anything.
That doesn't mean that the vaccine has not done its job. Different people's bodies react to the vaccine in different ways. So just like how the pain is very subjective, right? So our bodies respond to the vaccine in different ways. Some people, yes, they throw a huge tantrum like inside the body, because it's about our body's immune system picking up that spike protein and putting up a response against it. So we are just caught in the crossfire. It's a collateral damage that happens. But sometimes we might not get those effects. That does not mean that the vaccine has not been effective. So that's another concern that people have.
Right.
So for that person, no, it's not a contraindication. He can very well go ahead and get the vaccine, because yes, the body aches might be there for a while, but it goes away.
But in all this advice and so on that you've been proffering, we must tell you and put you on notice that these are all very general answers. For specific medical assistance, you must resort to consulting your own medical practitioner, your own doctor, who would be hopefully familiar with your own circumstances and your own
if
case.
I can add one more thing, because we have a hotline that is operated from the Health Promotion Bureau 1999, which is operated in all 3 languages 24/7, and your call is guaranteed to be answered by a medical professional.
By a
Health
human being.
Anybody can
1999. That
Yes.
sounds good to me.
just give a call and
Give
you
a
can
call.
get your personalized advice on it.
Wonderful. And now, of course, it is time for that other wonderful program, which is the Primetime News from News First. On that note, take care. Dr. Ashan, thank you very much for being on the program.
It's a pleasure.
And have a very good evening. And of course, God bless.